Welcome to the Ravenswood City School District Board meeting of September 14th, 2023. This meeting is called to order at 6:32 p.m. All right, I am going to start with roll call, and I'm very excited and happy to welcome our newest trustee. So I will start with him. So roll call: Trustee Samuel Tavera.
Present.
Trustee Tamara Shabomahin here. Trustee Mele Latu will be joining us shortly. Trustee Laura Nunez here. And I myself, Jenny Bloom, am present. This meeting has quorum and we will begin. So the first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have any questions or comments regarding the agenda?
Through the chair,
Yes.
we will need to pull item 8A as trustee Tavera was not present during that meeting. And then also we'll need to table item 8O.
Okay. Thank you. So any other questions or comments? Right. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda with pulling item 8A and tabling item 8O.
I move to approve the agenda,
Do I?
the edits mentioned.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We will move on now to the public hearing for textbook sufficiency, which is number 3. I do have to open the public hearing. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Oh, that's loud. Good evening, President Bloom, trustees, and I just want to also welcome our new trustee, Tavera. I'm Sarah Stone, the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and I'm here to start off our public hearing for our textbook sufficiency. If you scroll up, that would be great. I'm here to share that we have purchased, received, and we can affirm that we have all of the textbooks that we need from our adopted curriculum in all of our classrooms across the Ravenswood City School District. And so I'm here to say that we have textbook sufficiency, and this is our public hearing, if there are any questions.
Okay, I will open the public hearing now, unless there are questions or comments from the board. So now is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on the adequacy of pupil textbooks and instructional materials for 2023-2024 at 6:35 p.m. As we have no comments, I will close the public hearing at 6:35 p.m. I will also say for the record that Trustee Latu joined us at 6:34 p.m. So now we will move on to item number, or I adjourned it. So we're moving on to item number C, which is the consideration to approve resolution number SY 24-4, resolution on sufficiency of textbooks or instructional materials for FY 23-24. So I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve item 3C.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Can we read the resolution?
I'm happy to recite the resolution if
I have it here. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Ravenswood City School District, in order to comply with the requirements of Education Code, Section 60119, for the public hearing on Thursday, September 14th, there's a typo, 2023 at 7:30 p.m., which is on or before the 8th week of school, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to closed session. Now is the time. If there are any members of the public who would like to address anything that is in closed session, now is your time. As I see none, I will move on and I will adjourn us to closed session at 6:37 PM. Thank you. Welcome back to the Ravenswood City School District Board meeting of September 14th, 2023. We are returning to open session at 7:58 p.m. So now we will move on to the report taken in closed session. For item number 4A1, there was discussion, no action was taken. For item number 4B1 and 2, there was discussion and no action was taken. We will move on to number 8, the consent agenda. So we pulled item number 8A and we tabled item number 8. Oh, from the floor. Yes, sorry. So from the floor, the board sits as a hearing body and all matters are referred to the superintendent for follow-up. So legally, the board of trustees cannot take action on items that are not properly agendized. So now is the time if anybody has anything to discuss that is not agendized, now would be the time to do so. As I see none, I will move forward to item number 8, which is the consent agenda. So we pulled item number 8A. And we tabled 8 though. So for item number 8A, we pulled it because trustee Tavera was not on our board at that time. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for August 24th, 2023.
Through the chair, I move to approve item 8A.
Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed and abstain. Okay, so motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstain. So I will move forward to entertain a motion for the rest of the consent agenda with item 8A, without item 8A and item 8O tabled. Sorry.
Through the chair, I move to approve item 8 minus items 8A and 8O.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries 5-0. We will move on to item number 9, which is our unaudited actuals financial report.
Good evening, trustees. I'm pleased to introduce Reese Matsumoto, our Director of Finance, who's going to walk through our unaudited actuals for the past fiscal year.
Good evening, trustees. Welcome. Today I'm here to present a little bit or a small presentation on our unaudited actuals from the past fiscal year. There's been a lot of work that went into this from our entire business services team, from Will, our CBO, to Margaret, our business analyst, to Allison, our compliance coordinator. So I just wanted to take a second to recognize all the efforts from everyone on our team, in order to make sure that the year-end close went smooth and that we stay right on track for our goals, not only for this past fiscal year, but also moving forward. So to start things off, there's a couple big points that I want to touch on here. First of all is the change in revenue. So our revenue increased by 2.2 million. A large portion of that is from our ESSER 3 funds, which is our stimulus funds. These funds are on a repayment basis. So after we spend them down, we then get the money from the federal government. So a large portion of this is from money that we had spent actually in the previous fiscal year, but are just receiving the money now. And the other portion that has contributed to our revenue increase is from some upfront payment of Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant funds. So between those two, that's roughly 6.2 million right there. One other point that I wanted to just touch upon is that REF continued with their generous increased contribution towards our district. In particular, they've increased their allocation to us by roughly $3 million to help cover the talent initiative while we work to lease out the flood site and 2120 Euclid. The second thing to touch on here is just the change in expenditures, or I guess here the lack thereof. Our expenditures stayed relatively in line with the past years. However, one big thing, as you'll see later in this presentation, is that the funding source continued to change. So you'll see that most of our expenditures were from stimulus funds, and fewer of our expenditures were from general funds. Again, this is part of our continued plan to build up reserves so that once our stimulus funds lapse out, we can continue to keep our per pupil spending at relatively high levels. And the last thing to touch on here is the total balance. So again, as planned, we ran another modest surplus this year, roughly 5.5 million. Again, to reiterate the point I just talked about, this is all to build a healthy reserve so that once our stimulus funds lapse out, we are able to continue funding our students at relatively high levels, such as when we had most of the stimulus funds. The last thing, if I can just touch upon here, is this reflects concerted effort not only by us here in the central office of all the departments, but also all the staff at all of our schools, really getting on board behind this plan and understanding how to spend these funds, working with our staff around what are eligible expenses and making sure that we are coding things to the right place in order to make this vision come true. So moving on here to revenue. This slide breaks down our revenue by the different funding sources. I'll just touch upon the funding sources that actually move the most here. So our LCFF and basic aid money increased by roughly 1.8 million. A lot of that is from us flipping back and forth between LCFF and basic aid funding. Because there are multiple times during the year where you can switch back in between LCFF and basic aid funding, we actually began the year in LCFF funding, which is basically the state's allocation per pupil. And then we ended up moving into basic aid, which is it's based off of our local tax base. The other point I'd like to touch upon here is you'll notice our other state funds increased by a large amount. Similar to the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant funds, we also received a couple other funds up front. So this is the Literacy Coach Reading Specialist Grant, Arts, Music, and Instructional Material Grant. Basically, these funds we just get up front and then we have multiple years to spend it down. So again, this is just contributing to the relatively larger surplus that you saw on the first slide. One of the most important things if I could draw your attention to is the decrease in local funds. So every year we receive redevelopment agency funds, and these are split into two categories. The first category is for general school expenses, and the second category is actually for our construction and maintenance of our buildings, et cetera. So we are allowed to move some of these funds from Fund 1, which contains basically all of our school expenses, into Fund 21, which carries all of our construction and bond expenses. We moved 4.1 million of these funds that were the allocations from last year and also fiscal year 22-23 into Fund 21 so that they can more closely be with the other expenses that they're most relevant to. And the last two things I want to touch on here are the decrease in federal funds. So we fully spent down our title carryover from 18-19. And because title funds are very similar to stimulus funds in which you actually spend the money first and then you receive the money afterwards, we've been putting a lot of time recently to try and reconcile the books. Basically, because of you getting the money after the fact, after you spend it, after you report it, it's created kind of a backlog of funds within our books. So we're working right now with the county and the state in order to try and resolve that right now. So that's mostly the cause of that. And the last thing here is just for our stimulus funds. A majority of it is from our ESSER funds that we received. But again, I just wanted to point out that we received our upfront funding for a one-time Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, which we have a couple years to spend. Again, just to expound upon the point I've mentioned a couple times already, we are using our stimulus funds to help basically build up general funds in our reserves that we can plan on dipping into once our stimulus funds lapse out. So in fiscal year 23-24, we expect to receive the true last amount of stimulus funds. And then starting in fiscal year 24-25 to begin kind of slowly dipping into those reserves to, again, keep our per pupil spending high. The slide is just basically on our expenditures. And again, just touching upon what I had mentioned earlier, as you can see here, most of our expenses actually came from COVID funding, from those increased state funds, et cetera. The main thing to look at here is that bottom blue section, which stands for the general fund. Again, all of this in the name of increasing or decreasing our reliance on general fund for the next couple of years in order to build those reserves up. One other thing that I would like to point out here again is our per pupil expenditures have increased a lot. From fiscal year 18-19, we've actually seen a roughly 50% increase in per pupil expenditures. And then the last slide here, again, to hammer the point home one more time, if I haven't enough, this is our multi-year spending plan. So again, we are planning to basically run surpluses, and in fiscal year 22-23 was kind of our last year of planned surpluses before starting in this year, we're planning to dip into our reserves slowly in order to, again, keep our per pupil spending high. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments from the board? Great. Thank you, Reese, very much for this presentation. Very thorough and very clear. And thank you for the whole team, as you mentioned, the whole team here at the district site for making sure that this presentation was ready and all the audits that they did, and then also for the school staff side to make sure that they were spending the funds in the way that they're supposed to spend. So thank you so much for the heavy lifting and the work that you all do to make sure that we're prepared for what's next. So I will move on to item number 9. Yes, so it's item number 9B. So sorry. Yes, so 9A, consideration to approve. So I will entertain a motion to approve item number 9A.
Through the chair, I move to approve item 9A.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I will move on to item number 9B, the consideration to accept the 2022-2023 charter unaudited actuals financial reports.
Good evening again, trustees. Again, my name is Reese. I'm the Director of Finance. We here have a obligation to oversee our charter schools, and more importantly, to make sure that they are fiscally viable. Usually in the interims, we check to see that their multi-year projections, et cetera, make sense and that they actually have funds to cover the expenditures that they're projecting. However, for the unaudited actuals, we just make sure that things roughly align. Based on the reports that they submitted to us, we do believe that our charters can meet their financial obligations. That I end my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? I will entertain a motion to approve item 9B.
I move to approve item 9B.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. I will move on now to item number 10. The presentation of the option agreement and ground lease with USA Properties for affordable housing at 2120 Euclid. Welcome back, Dr. Eager.
It's good to be back, and just a note on the prior presentation. Just want to thank Reese again for all of his work over the last few weeks while I was on parental leave. He has been invaluable in holding down the fort. And it's been just so nice seeing. I mean, he really did like the year-end close all by himself. So. He is also literally going to leave for a 2-week vacation now, and I hope none of us hear from him during that entire time. So please leave. I think that's a board direction. Um, uh, good evening, trustees. I'm excited to talk to you tonight about the agreement that we have reached on the legal documents for developing affordable housing here at 2120 Euclid with USA Properties. Just want to talk a little about what's happening tonight and then what's going to happen at the ensuing, hopefully, should the board encourage that. Our plan is to present today two documents, a form of ground lease and a form of option agreement. We're going to present those documents to the board tonight. And these documents really represent not just the last couple months of legal negotiations since the board gave direction to proceed with USA Properties, but this really represents, multiple years of work on the facilities planning side, exploring different options, pursuing different agreements with different proposals. So really excited tonight to be able to present sort of in some ways the culmination of that work. Although we still have ways to go. But in brief and at its highest level, the proposal that we have today is 400 to 450 units of housing or homes in a 5-story wrap building. So parking would be in the middle. It'll be 100% affordable housing. There's two parts to the way that we would make money on this agreement. One is in a base rent that'll initially start at 1.6 million when the two buildings are developed fully. That's going to grow by 3% annually. I've talked about this before, but in terms of the public, 3% versus 2% over the life of a deal this long is a massive difference. It doesn't sound like that big, but 3% is a really material win for the district. It's 50% more money in base rent over the life of the agreement. Speaking of 50%, on top of the base rent, that 1.6 million growing by 3%, we're also going to be able to take part in 50% of the profit sharing. This will be sort of slow as the project pays off the debt in the early years. But after about year 15 or so, this will accelerate and become a major source of revenue for the district. Altogether, this development, as contemplated, should it meet the projections that we believe it will meet, is enough to cover not just the raises that we have talked about, but potentially a little bit more to allow for increased funding and investment in other academic programs. So we're very excited about the economics of this deal. And we're very excited, frankly, about the fact this is addressing the housing crisis in the area. So I want to talk through a couple of things. I'm going to go as quickly as I can. I want to talk about the project itself. I want to talk about why we're doing this or remind folks why we're doing this. It's been a little while. And I want to talk about what's in the contract, and I'll conclude with some next steps. This slide I have now updated more times than I would have cared to. We have been talking about this site really since early 2020. We have been thinking about how can we take this very large parcel and use it in a way that best benefits the community and the district itself. We've explored a whole bunch of different things. We've hired professional brokers. We've had so many community meetings, board meetings, newspaper articles, public discussions, private discussions, public marketing, private marketing. We've done really everything we can, and it has been a long and transparent process. I won't belabor the point, but it's just to highlight, we're now in really year 4 of this. At the last meeting, I believe, before the summer recess, we presented a project to the board. This was based on interviews and proposals from probably an initial set of conversations, maybe 30, 40, 50 developers or so. We boiled it down to 5 or so serious proposals, and this was by far the most competitive offer, we believe. It is a 5-story, 100% affordable housing project. It is going to be slightly smaller than the Soprado project next door, and smaller than the site is currently zoned for. So we could go up to 7 stories here. We're not proposing that because of the type of construction that we're doing. The development will go in 2 phases. And the reason for that is because of the size of the project, they're not able to get their tax credits all in one go. So they need to phase into 2 different parts. Combined, though, the buildings would bring in that $1.6 million. And that would happen over the 99-year term. I would highlight this is a very experienced professional developer. This isn't someone kind of off the street. These are some photos, not necessarily what this project would look like at all, but just projects that USA Properties has done. They are the largest affordable housing developer in California and one of the largest nationally. They're also what I think this is a nice nuance, they're vertically integrated. And what that means is we're going to be dealing with USA Properties likely through the entire lifetime of this building. This isn't someone who's going to come in, build something, and get out of the community. This is someone who's kind of here and has stayed historically in the communities that they're in. And they'll be here for the whole process. So they're going to design it, they're going to build it, they're going to manage it, they're going to find the funding. All of that's done within their single company. Turning now just to why we're doing the project. I'm going to go quickly through this. This is, I think, sort of maybe old news for the board, maybe new news for someone tuning in tonight. We're trying to do two things here. One is we have a housing crisis. 85% of our staff are eligible for affordable housing. 2% of our staff don't have a home right now, according to our survey from last year. And almost half of our staff are considering leaving the district because their housing is too expensive, or they've been forced to live in an area that's just too far away. People want to stay here. They want to work here. We're trying to make that possible. The second thing we're trying to do is we're trying to pay people enough money that they don't have to drive so far away. And maybe even, God forbid, they're ineligible for affordable housing. We're trying to get there. In order to do that, we got to close some of the systematic funding inequities that our district has. So let's tick through that. This is from our survey before. This is sort of asking our staff, do you have a safe, secure, affordable housing option? A third of our staff currently report not having that. And this again just talks about the distribution. So we have in here, San Mateo, they divide incomes into different categories based on your household income and based on the size of your household. 85% of folks who responded to our staff survey on their housing needs report having an income household size combination that doesn't allows them to live in affordable housing. So we think there's a big need, not just in our broader community, but even within our Ravenswood staff community. These are employed adults working in our schools every day. I haven't showed this graph in a while yet, so I'm excited to show it this year, and these numbers are getting out of date a little bit, but I want to just talk about weighted funding per pupil. So oftentimes when folks are looking at sort of money in the county, they'll often look at how many dollars per student. It's kind of something you'll hear a decent amount elsewhere. That's not the right way to look at it. We know students have different needs, and we know some students have more needs than others. And students with more needs generally cost more money to educate. The state of California came up with a formula, weighted student funding, using just the state's weights, which I don't think anybody would argue are the model of equity. They're certainly a step in the right direction. They're not perfect, and they definitely understate things. If you look at the weighted enrollment, so that is counting for special ed status, English learner status, homeless status, and you take that total enrollment divided by the weighted students, so the number of students accounting for their need, we have the lowest base allocation at the lowest amount of money in the county. With our existing leases, which we have some, we move up, we go to second lowest. With our new leases, we're average in the county. We're close to. We're definitely not on the right side of this graph. We're not up there with Woodside, Portola Valley, Menlo Park, but we're in the middle. We sort of have a chance. And with all of REF and with the stimulus funds, we're kind of in the right ballpark, right? But when you account for need, we are the lowest funded district in the area, right? Some of that shifting, and we've done a whole lot of work with leasing existing properties and working with the foundation to bring in funds, but we're still only in the middle. And so I just want to remind the community, we're not doing this because we're a particularly greedy district at all. We're doing this because we really need the funds. We need the support. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and compete for talent with the districts around us. The way we did that is we raised salaries a while ago. This is a graph which shows our percentile rank in 2021 on a bunch of positions across the county. There were some positions that we were actually fairly competitive with. But look at our principals. We had the lowest paid principals in the entire county. We had among the lowest paid teachers in the entire county, right? What we did is we took all of the school site positions, we brought them up to the top third, and we tried to bring our central office positions to the median of the county. So school sites, top third, median to the county. These leases between Flood and Euclid pay for this and some over time. So we're providing a strong financial base so that we can be not at the top of the county. Can't afford that, but we have a sort of fighting chance among folks when we're competing for talent in the town county. All right, turning to what's actually in this contract. The board is reviewing today. They are not taking action. They are just reviewing, as well as the public, 2 documents. The first is an option agreement That governs the sort of pre-construction time. So before they're ready to put shovels in the ground, getting their funding, getting their permits, getting their entitlements, making sure the community wants this, because there's a whole lot of engagement that still has to happen with the developer and the community. That's talked about in the option agreement. If they then choose to execute their option, it goes into the ground lease. The ground lease governs the 99-year term of the lease. This talks about what happens if there's a fire. This talks about how they pay their rent. This talks about anything that could come up in sort of normal ownership of a building over a long period of time. So I'm going to turn through each of those documents in turn. I would highlight for members of the community who maybe spend a lot of time looking through the Alliant agreement for the flood site. This is more or less the exact same legal document. We worked with the same lawyers, just changed to fit the specifics of the USA Properties deal. USA will put some money down at signing after the diligence period. This is mainly non-refundable unless there's sort of particular things that come up. They will almost certainly build one building before the other. So there will end up ultimately being actually two identical ground leases. So you may notice some blanks in the ground lease. That's what that's for. The key thing about this is there's an outside deadline. So even though there's milestones contemplated in the ground lease, they have to get the whole thing, both buildings built after 36 months. And we put some milestones in along the way, really just to make sure that they're progressing in an honest way and keeping the ball rolling forward and not just sort of sitting and waiting. So they can't run out the clock and they have to be done within that 36-month period, we get that money back. Turning now to the ground lease. This is a 99-year ground lease. It's a long time. It's a long time. That, of course, means that we own the land in perpetuity. So we're never giving away this land, or sorry, the future board could choose to give away this land, but we're not thinking about that at all. We own the land, but it is a ground lease. There will be two buildings, sort of different. Talk about the specifics of the rent. One sort of part of the site and second part of the site have slightly different sizes of rent based on the number of units planned there. Either way, the base rent will grow by about 3%. We also will receive 50% of net cash flow. What this means is after they collect their gross receipts, their revenue from the apartments, and they pay off their expenses to operate the apartment, we get half of the money that's left over. They're more or less responsible for everything that could happen at this site during the 99 years. And if they prove not to be responsible for some aspect of it, we would take the building back. We would find somebody who could responsibly manage it. So we do have, reasonable expectations for progress and work that is done here. That's partly because we owe it to the folks who are going to live here, which could include our teachers and staff. Partly because we owe it to the community, and partly because we receive 50% of the profits from this. We do want a well-run site for any number of reasons. A couple of other things just to highlight here. The housing affordability requirements fall off after 55 years. So the federal government, when they're saying we're going to fund affordable housing, that requirement lasts for 55 years. We're allowing, unlike with the flood site, we're not requiring them to keep that same mix of units. We're allowing them to float the mix of units up so that more of the units could actually be 80% AMI. That allows for a bit more money to come into the project, and it really allows for renovations to take place. It also addresses something that the board has raised as a concern of it's hard for some middle income folks in the area to find meaningful housing. And so we are trying to make homes available for middle income folks. Throughout the life of the lease here, teachers and staff would have a guaranteed preference for the full term of the lease. So when units open up, our staff would always be first in line. We're hoping to add another preference or two, but don't have an update for that at this time, or an open session, but we are continuing to negotiate on other ways to make sure members of our community benefit from this project. A couple of just things to talk through. There's no entitlement contingencies as there were in the Alliant deal. So unlike Alliant, we're waiting for the site to be rezoned, waiting on that. And then there's two phases of development, so two buildings, not just one here. Unlike with the vacant flood school site, there's also some differences just around us being able to stay in these buildings. So once they need to start construction, we do need to move out, but we don't necessarily need to move out tomorrow should they, in October, should the board approve the option of ground lease. And we do have some flexibility, as I talked about, with that 80% float up to AMI, which we did not have with the flood site. Other than that, the documents are more or less the same. Just to let you know that here's sort of our planned next steps here. Obviously, should the board sort of indicate that this is appropriate and we're ready to proceed, we'd like to bring the final documents, which will include a couple of changes, back to the board on 9/28. After that, USA Properties will have a brief amount of time, I forget if it's 2 or 3 months, to conduct their diligence. And after that, there's a 36-month period where they have to get their funding, permits, approved designs for the 2 projects. After that, they'll execute the ground lease, construction will begin, and a little bit after that, maybe 2-3 years, tenants will move in. That was a lot of information very quickly, and we've also attached literally hundreds of pages to this particular item. So happy to take any questions, but with that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
Sorry, I should have asked this sooner, but I have one question. Yes. I'm just curious about how the timeline lines up with the construction of the new central office. Like, we wouldn't be homeless while in the transitions. Like, do the construction timelines kind of coincide in a way that keeps you on?
That is the goal. The goal is for all of us to be continually housed. So should the board proceed with this, there's definitely been a lot of talk, a lot of planning. The board's obviously approved the community hub lease for the field off Bay Road. We still want to move there, but I need to get in gear, let's put it, to make sure that we don't have any sort of gaps there. Should that happen, we're working with the facilities subcommittee on this for years now, a couple of, let's call it, fallback plans, or where we could have the district office temporarily housed, should that happen. But my goal is for that very much not to happen. So hoping to move really quickly to make that work.
Chair,
Yes.
isn't it also possible that we can refurbish some of, because if it lines up properly, it'll be around the time that one of our elementary schools will be done, and there's some portables at that site that we could always repurpose at another site.
That's exactly
Or
right.
that site.
We have a couple of unused portables in various places that I think could be let's say, adequate housing for a district office of our size. Not perfect and not a good long-term home, but a good. I'm not overly nervous about that, but there's definitely I need to be hustling on that one, sort of sense from me at least.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
One question, just is there, I know it doesn't affect the long scale, the scale of the project, but just from my understanding, is there any projection that the 85% changes, it goes higher than 85%, like when the project starts and when the project ends?
Or you're referring to the 85% of our staff who
Yeah.
are eligible for affordable housing. I don't know the answer to that. It's a hard question to answer. I think what it would come down to is whether or not you believe that average median income in the area, so the average income of folks in San Mateo, would grow faster or slower than our staff. So if our staff saw salaries grow 15% a year and everybody else saw their salaries grow 5% a year, it would go down. And if everybody else saw 15% and we saw 5%, sure, made up numbers about it for illustrative purposes only, but that would then affect the mix. So I don't necessarily know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I think it was unfair for me to ask you in that sense, because now it's a huge question for you to be like, yes, it's gonna change, but like in these, and I'm thankful for the presentations. But are you then gonna like reproject maybe that there's a possibility that numbers like this can change in the future?
I think we continue to ask our staff, and we can certainly re-up the survey to really understand their housing needs as we get closer. I know from prior housing projects that have opened up in the area, I think it hasn't landed perfectly. We've opened units, but not necessarily the right income mix or price point to our staff. And so I think that's something we're probably constantly going to be wanting to think about, just how we're helping our staff find housing that's close to where they work. Because I know that's important to our staff, but I don't know. I guess I'm probably struggling with this a little bit. It's hard for me to project the future, but I think it's something we constantly be looking at, something we definitely want to revisit.
Through the chair, thank you, Will and team, for all the work that's been going on. I think it's also important for us to really hone in on the fact that housing is a desperate need in our region and in our community. And this district is taking initiative to address some of these needs that we see directly from our constituents. And so thank you to our staff, and there has been many versions and we're still perfecting everything as we continue forward. But from now until the next meeting, it's also important for our community members to also reach out and if they have any questions or anything to come and let us know so that we can hear more and also make any adjustments that might need to happen.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Trustee Shinawatra, I'm sorry to prolong the conversation, but through the chair. I'm wondering. So this is all new area for me. You know, staff housing and all that, obviously not new for my position here. And this board, but just in life generally. And I'm wondering about precedents for staff housing for school employees, even outside of the income like parameters. And wondering, because when I think about the raises that we've worked hard to get folks, like how that might potentially have changed that number, that percentage, how other things might change that for your question, trustee. And I think it would be really great if there was a way that we could still prioritize folks, even folks now who are outside. And I know you spoke to that and we talked about changing that percentage, but like, is there another way that we can also then prioritize employees, Ravenswood priorities outside of the income guideline?
Yeah, I think it's something we can look at. I would say I've learned enough to be a little dangerous on some housing aspects. And I would say I do think there is sort of a missing middle that a lot of the 15% of our staff who are not eligible for, probably not able to afford those premium luxury apartments that open in various places, and also not eligible to live in sort of federally and state subsidized housing. So there is a gap that I think is just frankly difficult to develop for, that a lot of our staff are in. I think it's something the district could certainly take a look at. I know local districts have passed, for example, bonds to build housing. We've had to pass bonds to rebuild our schools. And that just has to be the board's first priority. It has been. But it's certainly something I think that as we sort of move through some of this, we could look at in more depth. One bright spot, or perhaps not a bright spot, is that 85% actually was done after the raises. So that 85% wasn't pre-raises, it was actually after the raises, which is still awfully alarming, I would say, but perhaps alleviate some of the need for even more sort of missing middle housing. I certainly agree with the sentiment. I think we can certainly explore it, but it's tough.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you, Will, for your presentation and for all the hard work that you and our broker have put to talk to and negotiate with everybody. And I know that everybody's worked really hard to get this done for, like you showed us before, years. So thank you very much. And thank you for to the staff and everyone to hear the needs of our community and the thoughts of our board, and for us to be able to use our district land to continue to be another source of benefit for our community. So thank you so much for listening and hearing, and just for even the way that things shifted and we were able to change very quickly for who was leasing out this site and finding a new person right away. So thank you so much for the hard work, and we look forward to the September, the next meeting for us to approve this lease, hopefully approve this lease. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to item number 11, which is the resolution authorizing the issuance of the sale of general obligation bonds and in the amount not to exceed $51 million.
Good evening again. I'm pleased to be joined by Shin Green from Eashore Consulting. He's been our financial advisor for quite some time now, I would say. I think it's perhaps a local legend. I know he was here last time to kind of explain some of the mechanics of this, but just to remind the board what we're voting on today. When the public passes a bond, it authorizes us to draw down funds from time to time to actually get the cash. So when the public passes the bond, that $110 million from Measure I is not sitting in our bank account. It's sitting sort of unissued somewhere. Once we issue it, the money goes to our bank account and we can start construction. For those of you who've been to Bellhaven lately or CCRMS or even been to Los Robles, we're getting real close to starting construction, which is really exciting. So we're trying to move fast and we need some money to start that construction. What we're asking the board to do is authorize us to issue up to 51, it'll be $50 million of that bond, of that $110 million bond, for us to begin construction of Bellhaven, really. The CCRMS project is largely in the other bond. So that's sort of where we're headed. What the board is actually voting on is kind of an unusual document. I know we've done this. I think this is my third issuance, my fourth issuance, but it's always sort of a weird document. The board's voting specifically on the resolution. The resolution authorizes the superintendent or her designee to fill in the blanks through the public sale of this debt. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to go to various markets. We're going to have the dream team together back again. We're going to sell a lot of this debt to various folks. We're going to get the cash, and we're going to come back to you with sort of the blanks filled in on some of these documents. So what the board is really voting on tonight is the resolution authorizing those other attachments for us to go fill those in. So it's a bit different with sort of mechanically how this works. Again, I think this is our third or fourth one of these, so hopefully no news there, but happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? No. All right, so I will entertain a motion to pass item number 11, the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the GO bonds.
I move to approve item 11.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say. I'm sorry. You're right. Reading the resolution.
Resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds of the Ravenswood City School District in an amount not to exceed 51 million by negotiated sale. Whereas an election of 2022, so on, so forth.
Thank you. Now I will take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Right. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We will now move on to item number 12, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board of Trustees. We are on our 21st day of school, of classroom instruction. And as we start here, I want to first highlight that we are constantly trying to reinforce our commitment to California state standards of the teaching profession. Number 2, where we want to create and maintain effective environments for student learning. And here you will see Yadira Alcantar, but specifically, I want to be able to highlight that, the exceptional work of our paraeducator twos who play a vital role in supporting the growth of students with moderate to severe needs in our unique classrooms. We definitely pride ourselves in inclusivity and making sure that every student we serve is in a learning environment that mirrors our commitment of CSTP2. So one example here is Yadira Alcantar, a paraeducator too, who provides invaluable support to a student who is nonverbal. Yadira's deep understanding of the student's strength is truly commendable in the sense that I experienced this personally, where I went into the unique class to visit our students and to see them in action and their learning in action, specifically to the specific needs and ways that best serve them. And I got close to this student who grabbed my hair, and Yadira was quick to explain, not to alarm me, but to inform me that this student thrives on engaging in her environment by using her sense of smell. I might have had some extra perfume on that day too. But this insight just reminds us of the profound importance of getting to know our students on a very personal level enabling to tap into their strengths, even when they may not recognize it themselves. And so I just want to ensure that when you all do a visit, and this was also brought to our attention by special education team members, it's really important too that we step into the classrooms with students with moderate to severe needs to see how we're providing services to all. Back to school night was also the last couple of weeks. And I just want to give you a quick highlight here around back to school nights and community engagement. Specifically just how remarkable it was in terms of promoting collaboration between our schools, parents, and students. They served as a platform to really engage the community, building community at our school sites, again, reinforcing how we want to create the environments for our schools. And I just want to quickly highlight some specifics. First is, our schools, our principals ensured that our staff had engaging presentations, highlighting the new curriculum that we adopted, the learning objectives for that grade level, and then just expectations throughout the rest of the academic year that what parents should expect. And just transparency for parents so that they are well informed about their child's educational journey at the school. There's also workshops at some of our school sites offering parents insight on study strategies, specifically at Belhaven, stepping into the 4th grade classrooms of Julie Sosa and Paige Richards. They were providing strategies for their students and parents at the same time, so that they know how to help students in the home and navigate some of the digital resources that are made available to our students. And then we really wanted to emphasize fostering a sense of community. Here you notice a line of parents and parents at the table with our community outreach, our family and enrichment, our family and engagement coordinator. Here we had 27 families get their live scans done for free to be able to volunteer in our schools. And so primarily they were mainly families from Belhaven, but also families from Castaño, Los Robles, Ronald McNair all came as well to get fingerprinted so they can be consistent volunteers at their children's school. And then also, obviously, families had the opportunity to get valuable resources and materials from their schools, as well as study guides and just information on how to best contact teachers and support staff. But amidst all of this, I think families have come away with just excitement about the 23-24 school year. I just also want to emphasize myself in terms of the goal of being as transparent and holding accountability as a leader of the school districts. I share this with you all as well, that I pride myself in leading and being guided by our community and committed to elevating our past successes while addressing future challenges for the betterment of our students and our community at large. And I believe that the accountability for me extends beyond the Board of Trustees. It should involve our broader community. And I envision our instructional leadership teams at each of our schools being as equally accountable as well and motivated to serve our families within their respective school communities. So these teams will utilize a variety of data sources, and data points, including street level and map level insights to evaluate the effectiveness of our initiatives, uncover any blind spots, and pinpoint areas for improvement. And so our instructional leadership teams are to be established at every school, and they're to be designed to ensure that there is distributed leadership and voices within each site, and to make sure that each grade level span is represented, and also different positions like special education. So our ILTs, our instructional leadership teams, ensure that structures are in place to provide evidence of the student outcomes that we want to achieve. So as we work towards fulfilling our Ravenswood promise and beginning to launch our new phase of our strategic planning, our commitment lies in staying just well-informed, pushing the boundaries of our usual practices, and relentlessly pursuing continuous improvement. And that means we need to know where our students are. So here we last year established our diagnostic assessment and benchmark map level data through iReady. And so it is crucial for us to assess in order to improve student performance across our district, to know where our students are performing. And you can see here that our beginning of the year assessments have taken place For the middle school, they closed September 1st. The window closed for September 1st. And for 2nd through 5th grade, they close tomorrow, the 15th. So far, we have about 91% of our students who completed the ELA diagnostic and 87% of our students who completed the math diagnostic. And so obviously majority of students have successfully completed this, and they are poised to be able to receive targeted instruction and intervention based on their diagnostic results. And so I just want to emphasize that our goal here is using the beginning of the year assessments to be able to identify any extra support our students need, especially during our universal tier 2 time that will commence after teachers are able to review the data. And then obviously highlight any real-time needs that students might have. So we will be sharing more of that data with you. We are going to share our vital signs presentation, most likely the first board meeting in October. And then 2 more highlights here and things to present to you all is the Living the Promise MOU. So last night I had the privilege of attending the San Mateo County Community College District Board of Trustees meeting, during which the Living Promise Memorandum of Understanding MOU was presented. The presentation was a comprehensive update of the achievements and progress made in the first year of the MOU, which establishes a partnership between the colleges here, as well as Sequoia Unified High School District and the Ravenswood City School District. And so you may recall that during the regular board meeting, or the regular meeting held April 27th, not our board meeting, but San Mateo board meeting, they approved the MOU, which aims at enhancing the enrollment of students from the Sequoia Union High School District into higher education institutions. Specifically Kenyatta College, Cal State University of East Bay, and San Francisco State University. And so the agreement encompasses a range of strategies, including increasing involvement in Sequoia Union High School District students in early college access. And then you can see specifically the list there of how this would impact Ravenswood City School District. Primarily short-term goal is just organizing college tours, hosting a spring break camp, facilitating summer camp, and then, exploring opportunities for potentially college courses for those 8th graders entering 9th grade. And then long-term is looking at internship experiences and how we can explore more of the partnerships through our community-based organizations as well. And the middle college director, Stephen Renman, through Sequoia Union High School District, has been instrumental in staying in touch with not only myself and our assistant superintendent, but also our principal at CCRMS. And he already has several meetings in the books to review data with Sarah and to schedule early events this year to start orienting himself with our campus and our students. And then, of course, the board approved our resolution honoring and celebrating the Hispanic Heritage Month of 2023 here, especially as we focus on the theme of, make it even larger for my eyes. You guys have their uniting communities and just stressing the solidarity in a divided world, right? And so we are honored to be able to have a large population of Latinx community members who have enhanced our community in East Palo Alto and Eastern Menlo Park, and are excited to be able to showcase and celebrate the rich culture and contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update, Superintendent Sudaria. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you very much. It was great to see some of the back to school events, and I'm excited to see all the different events that will pop up because we have so many more parent volunteers. I think that that's very, very exciting.
Yeah, this is a TK family. Michael and Yadira and their TK are at Bellhaven. Michael has applied to be on the visioning team, and Yadira had applied to be on the bond oversight committee. So we really just pleased about the investment some of our families are taking the initiative to participate in.
Thank you so much. With that, I will move on to the next item, which is item number 13, board reports and communication. Are there any board reports or communication? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to report that on Tuesday, September 11th, I did 2 site visits to Castaño and to CDRMS with trustee Latu. And I was able to meet at Castaño, the new principal, Mr. Pac-Man. And I was very intrigued, and I was telling the superintendent that I don't think he caught it, but one of the students, because his last name is Pac-Man, they grumbled and they're like, I'm a ghost and I'm gonna get you, you know. And I just love seeing that. Met some awesome TK students, met some great staff on site, and CCRMS got to see the updates with the construction. Excited about that. Didn't get to meet the principal, but a lot of school staff. I also met with the RTA today before our meeting today, and then we'll be meeting with the Ravenswood Education Foundation and Jenna very soon. And then I want to thank Superintendent Sadaria and the district staff, Maria also, and all the staff behind the scenes that have been helping to onboard me. So I appreciate that. It's a long process, but it's a great process. And even bugging the superintendent about, you know, the consent agenda and some of these partnerships that we have. So I wasn't voting blindly. And then I'll be taking some masters in governance courses. So I'm also excited for that. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Through the chair, I'll keep mine pretty brief. Community-wise, on September 21st, the Palo Alto Airport will be having a meeting at Bloomhouse from 5 to 7. This conversation is an ongoing conversation they're having about their long-range facility and just any other comments. And considering the fact that they fly over our school sites and our neighborhood, I think it'll be a great opportunity for them to hear from our constituents. To our district families, traffic has been a nightmare. I greatly apologize. And I hope that we can work with the city to alleviate some of the potholes leading up to our school sites. And also continue that conversation on safety planning within our community. But also our schools are looking great. Construction is almost complete or gearing up to being complete at the middle school. And for all the other sites, get ready. But I promise you, it's only temporary. When you're sitting in your new classroom, it'll all be worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a few community announcements. One of them was the airport meeting. I think there's also one that's scheduled for Menlo Park as well. So you can also attend that. I believe it's on Tuesday. So the one in Menlo Park is Tuesday and the one in East Palo Alto is Thursday. There is also a survey that is online for that Palo Alto airport issue. So if you want to make comment, there is a survey that you can scan and fill out as well if you cannot attend in person. There is going to be a special study session at Sequoia Union High School District on Wednesday regarding leveled coursework. They have a white paper that is out and published on their agenda, which is accessible to the public today. So if any members of the community, future members of Sequoia Union High School District would like to know what the different course offerings are and the reasoning behind it, that is there, and they are having a discussion regarding it if you would like to go make public comment. There is another event for the Sequoia Union High School District and the old Ravenswood High School alumni virtual meeting. There's a virtual meeting, I believe, on Friday. And if you are a Ravenswood High School alumni, you are welcome to attend. And I believe if anybody wants to listen in, it is one that is hosted by SUHSD and the East Palo Alto Community Archive. The virtual meeting is happening on September 15th from 10 to 11 a.m. So that is tomorrow from 10 to 11. And then, okay, let me see, there's so many. There is a music festival that is happening on Saturday that I had up for a sec, but moved. Okay, September 16th from 12 to noon on Weeks Street. So if 12 noon to 7 p.m. on 1175 Week Street in East Palo Alto. It is open and they have a variety of different multi-ethnic vendors and shows and bands and dancers also dancing. So please come out. And then the last one is that there is a Latina Culture and History Month 2023, an independent celebration. It's for the celebration from September 15th to October 15th. And there's going to be a reception and presentation of the calendar of events and independence ceremony on Friday, September 15th, which is tomorrow, from 6 to 8 at Epicenter, which is on the corner of Bay and Pulvis. So if you are able to attend, that is another event that you can also attend. And with that, I'm done. And we can move on to the next item, which is the board policies presented to the board for first reading. Are there any, item number 14, are there any questions or comments or? No. Okay, so I will move on to item number 15, which we don't need, which is the consideration to approve resolution because all of us are here. Item number 16, there's a special board meeting, a board retreat that's going to be held on September 21st at 5 p.m. Our next item, which is our next regular board meeting, will be held on September 28th at 6:30 p.m. An open session will begin at 7:15 p.m. at Castaño School of the Arts. So the location will be different than this for our next regular scheduled board meeting. And so with that, I will adjourn us at 9 p.m.